The following program is underwritten by the generous support of Associates of Glens Falls and Loomis and Lipan Insurance. Since 1852, they have been assisting both businesses and individuals across the country secure the most comprehensive insurance products available. Associates of Glens Falls is proud to partner with Central Insurance Companies. Public affairs programming on Look TV is underwritten by the generous support of Pinnell's Restaurant, classic Italian-American food since 1922, and Stored Tech, technology solutions for computers, networks, and phone. Stored Tech, your technology, our passion.
1922, Babe Ruth debuts with the Yankees. WGY signs on air. Exterminator wins the Saratoga Cup, and Pinnell's Restaurant opens its doors for the very first time. For 5 generations, Pinnell's has been preparing delicious Italian food, served in a comfortable, home-like setting where everyone is welcomed. 90 years of authentic Italian recipes, 90 years of the freshest ingredients, and 90 years of the finest classic Italian dishes, all made daily by hand. Pinnell's Italian Restaurant, a Saratoga dining tradition since 1922.
Most cybersecurity firms deal only with prevention, the systems that block hackers and viruses. Stored Tech knows the root cause is actually good people doing bad things. So we offer a security training program which includes certifying all participants to show they understand the basics.
Technology solutions for computers, networks, and phones. Stored Tech, your technology, our passion.
All right. Well, let me begin the meeting. Good evening, everybody. It is a Town of Queensbury Town Board meeting, a regular Town Board meeting. It's April 19th, 2021, and the time is 7:07 p.m. And before we begin the regular agenda items, would you please join me in saying the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge of Allegiance to the United States of America. To the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thank you. As you all know, tonight we have a very special presentation, and it's a presentation by New York State's Department of Environmental Conservation, as well as New York State's Department of Health. The topic is an update on the Jenkinsville area drinking water and environmental assessments. So let me introduce the folks from DEC who are with us tonight. You will probably hear their names as the presentation goes forward. I'm going to just read them in the way they were presented to me. Sean Mahar, DEC Chief of Staff. Kevin Wood, DEC, Regional Materials Management Engineer. Justin Deming, DOH, Department of Health, Regional Chief. Anthony Balasina, DEC, Division of Environmental Remediation Project Manager. Susan Edwards, who is the Director for Bureau D in the Division of Environmental Remediation. Eric Hasseman, who is here from the DEC. Faye Navratil from the Department of Health, and Tom Johnson from the Department of Health. I think I got everybody. So I'm going to hand it over to you, Eric, and I'll get out of your way, and I'll come back after the presentation, okay?
Thank you, Supervisor. So this is Sean Mahar. I'm the Chief of Staff for DEC. I'll kick us off here tonight. And I won't say too much because I know there is a lot of interest in what we're going to present on tonight. And happy to be joined by a number of our experts here at the Department of Environmental Conservation and the Department of Health who have been working on this initiative in your community. Unfortunately, we've had to gain a lot of experience here working on emerging contaminants around the state. As you know, the Department of Health has recently implemented new maximum contaminant levels of these emerging contaminants, PFOA, PFOS, and 1,4-dioxane in drinking water. And as part of that effort across the state, we at DEC have been engaged in looking at potential sites that may be contributing to contamination that we're seeing in the environment and drinking water supplies around the state. And that is what has brought us to your community, and in particular your area. And I know there are a lot of community questions out there, and we hope tonight's presentation will go a little bit more in depth from the community newsletter that we've recently put out, which did a good job of really walking through all the different actions that we have underway, and sort of how we've come to be where we are in your community tonight. And again, we hope this presentation will answer a lot of your questions up front, but we really do want to get into a dialogue with you and make sure that you and other community members have a full understanding of what the Department of Environmental Conservation and the Department of Health are doing in your community, and just know the resources that are here for you to continue this conversation and continue to answer any questions. And I know anytime that people hear water contamination, automatically a lot of fear is triggered. And what we hope to show tonight is exactly how we're using the best available science and really the best scientific minds in the state to make sure that we have a good handle of what's going on in your community, and you understand the stepwise scientific approach that we're taking, and again, the next steps in the process that we'll be working on with you in the coming weeks and months as our efforts progress. So without further ado, I would like to turn it over to Kevin Wood, who is our materials management engineer in our regional office. So Kevin, why don't you give us an overview of how we came to look at the landfills in this community?
Okay, so next one, please, Eric. So I'm going to be providing an overview of our Inactive Landfill initiative. First, though, we're looking at a map. I think a lot of people have probably seen this picture or one similar to it. As everybody is aware, we have several landfills in this area. I know we've been talking a lot about Queensbury landfill. Really, that's just because that's the first one we started looking at. But we also have these other sites here. The Finch paper landfill, which is actually an old paper sludge landfill. The Queensbury landfill, of course, which was a municipal solid waste landfill used by the communities in the surrounding area. The SEBA landfill, it's actually the only one of these four that's considered a hazardous waste landfill. That landfill received industrial sludges from SEBA's operation down on Warren Street in Queensbury when that was operating. That landfill is actually now owned by a company called BASF. And then the McLaughlin construction debris landfill, which I think is probably the newest one of this bunch, operated and it accepted construction debris and is currently actually owned by Warren County. Next one, please. You can skip this one too. So a lot of people may recall 5 or 6 years ago, down in Hoosick Falls, there was a pretty substantial PFOA contamination issue that got a lot of media attention, was very resource intensive for our agency and others to respond to. And sort of in response to that, the legislature passed this Clean Water Infrastructure Act 2017. The law essentially establishes a program that requires DEC to look at and assess all of our inactive solid waste sites for the possibility of those sites impacting drinking water supplies, particularly with respect to emerging contaminants. Pretty big undertaking. Basically, we're working on this project in conjunction with the Department of Health, and we also have a contractor, Parsons Engineering, that's helping us with it. And, the focus primarily, like I said, is on these new emerging contaminants, PFAS compounds, which the two common ones that people hear about are PFOA and PFOS, but there's a whole family of these. I think we're up to about 30 now, if I'm not mistaken, that are on the list. 1,4-dioxane is the other one. And under this program, we're also looking at additional parameters that they're indicators that we see when we're looking at landfill leachate or liquid that comes out of the landfill, iron, manganese, sodium. There's a handful of them. And we use those to kind of just indicate to us if we're dealing with a landfill leachate or maybe possibly some other source. Okay, next, please. So how do we go about doing this? So like I said, the legislature passed this act requiring us to look at all of these sites. We came up with an inventory statewide, almost 2,000 sites that we identified. Within DEC Region 5, where you are currently sitting, it's an 8-county area, and we have somewhere in the neighborhood of 250 of these sites within our region. We started out by inspecting all of them, and we developed a ranking system so that we could prioritize them from, the most important to the least important, because this is a multi-year program. We started a few years ago, and 3 or 4 years into it, we at least have 3 or 4 more years at least. So once we inspected them, ranked them, prioritized them, now we're kind of going through and taking that list and, doing our investigations. And the reason that Queensbury Landfill came up in 2020, its ranking came up on our list. It was its turn to be looked at, which is why we went out there. We performed the groundwater sampling at that location. So with all these sites, we're looking at these compounds. A lot of these here that you see are compounds that we've looked at from landfills for a long, long time. Of course, the newcomers, the PFAS compounds and 1,4-dioxane, these are things that we didn't look at up until a couple of years ago when they kind of came to light as these so-called emerging contaminants. So once we, do our groundwater sampling at one of these sites, and if we find that we in fact have groundwater concentrations above the drinking water standards, or the NMCLs that they're referred to, then we move it on to the next stage. And this is the course that the Queensbury landfill situation took, because, we did find both PFAS and 1,4-dioxane in exceedance of the MCLs at the landfill. So led us to the next step, which basically is to develop this focus list of possible receptors. And of course, in this particular case, we have the neighborhood down there, which is close by and, down gradient from landfills. So this is the point in the process where we kind of bring in the Department of Health. We work with the DOH to develop this focus list. We're just trying to look at the surrounding area. Who's on public water? Who's on private water? Are they residences, businesses? Once we develop that focus list, then we kind of hand it to DOH at that point to undertake the sampling of those drinking water supply wells. If at that time, if we find that there are drinking water supply wells in the area that have concentrations exceeding the MCLs, then the next step is to provide some kind of alternate drinking water supply. In this case, I know bottled water has been provided. In some of the other cases where we have PFAS contamination, there's a treatment system that we can use also to address that. And then, of course, last but certainly not least, going forward is, additional site investigations, trying to identify where the problems are coming from, and, figuring out what courses of action can be taken. Next, please. So the focus list development, how do we develop these lists? So our first stab at it is to basically look at sites that are within a quarter mile of the subject site. It's typically going to be, residential drinking water wells or public water supply wells, like at restaurants or that sort of thing, hotels. And we're really primarily interested in the down gradient direction. In other words, in the direction where the groundwater is flowing. But that being said, if certain conditions warrant it, we can go out beyond a quarter mile or look at other adjacent areas to the site. This case is a perfect one in that example. I mean, we started out looking at some of the houses that sort of border the neighborhood and the landfills. And then once we got some hits in those locations, we expanded our focus list out to include additional residences. And then the DOH really they're the ones that are, reaching out to the property owners and making that contact to get that water tested. Okay, next group. That's our Inactive Landfill initiative in a nutshell. So as we mentioned a little while ago, we have several other landfills in this area. The town of Queensbury landfill, of course, we'll talk about that. Tony's going to talk about that in a little more detail in a few minutes, since we already have data from that site and we're a little further along with that one. But I just want you to be aware of some of the activities that we're undertaking at these other sites nearby. The Finch landfill actually has an existing monitoring well network that we've been tracking since it was closed 20 some odd years ago. So we contacted Finch and we reached out. We made arrangements to go out there and sample those wells for the emerging contaminants. That was done a few weeks ago. The McLaughlin construction debris landfill, that landfill, when it was operating and closed, actually didn't require monitoring wells under our landfill regulatory program that we have, but it has them now. We went out, we installed 5 wells a couple of weeks ago. That sampling is going to be conducted next week on those wells. So you may see them out there. If you're driving up the hill, you may see the crew out there sampling those wells, the new wells in McLaughlin. The SEBA Landfill, similar to Finch and Queensbury, has an existing monitoring well network that we've been tracking for 20 years or so since the landfill closed, or more than that, I guess, in this case. We've been in discussions with the owner about sampling that one, and we actually just found out today, incidentally, that sampling is going to occur also next week. So we'll be out there next week doing that one. Our laboratory turnaround time is about a month. So once we get the result, or once we do the field sampling, it'll be, about a month or so before we can get the results back and have something available. So, we're looking at these other sites. We're really trying to get an idea, overall what's happening in this area. I mean, there's a lot going on. There's a lot of landfills. We want to make sure we're looking at all the possible sources, and, try to get a better handle on the groundwater flow direction in this area. I mean, we have a pretty good idea, but the more data points you have, the better, feel you get for what's really happening with the groundwater flow direction. And, also just to determine if we need to expand our focus list anymore to any additional areas or whatnot. So with that, I will turn it back to Sean and Eric.
Can we ask questions in between
Sure,
presentations?
We can, Kevin, or Supervisor. We can pause for questions. We were going to try and get through this quickly because some of those questions may be answered, but we can pause for a few right now.
Well, this is my name is Councilman Tim McNulty. This is specific of what Kevin just talked about. When you use the term tracking, you said you've been tracking these wells over a period of time. What exactly does tracking mean?
Okay, so when these landfills were closed, the three of them, not the McLaughlin landfill, because it didn't have wells, but the Queensbury, the Finch paper landfill, and the SEBA landfill, at the time they were closed, they were required to install a monitoring well network. And as part of that, they are sampled on an annual basis. They started out initially being sampled on a quarterly basis, typically. Over time, a lot of them have been given, authorization to maybe go to biannually, but they're sampled routinely for landfill leachate constituents that we have. We have a whole list of them. And so they have contractors come and sample those wells, and DC gets a report on those results, and we are tracking the groundwater quality data in this area based on those wells. And we've been doing that for, like I said, 20 years since these sites were closed.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, Councilman. All right, up next, we're going to go to Tony Balacina, who is with our Division of Environmental Remediation here at DEC. So we talked about materials management. Those are the crew that oversees the landfills. And now when it comes to environmental cleanups, environmental remediation is the division that handles that. So Tony, why don't you take us away?
Great, thanks. Just a couple nods of affirmation. Can you hear me? Great,
yes,
thank you. So yeah, I'm Anthony Bolacina, or Tony Bolacina, as a lot of you guys can call me. That's just fine. I work with the Department of Environmental Conservation. I'll be the project manager overseeing investigations going forward specific to the Queensbury landfill. My goal here is threefold. It's to follow up on what Kevin has said, what Kevin has presented regarding the Queensbury landfill, outline what a site characterization entails, and explain what happens after a site characterization is completed. So continue on from what Kevin presented. The Queensbury landfill was sampled in 2020 as part of the Inactive Landfill Initiative. Results from the on-site monitoring wells indicated some levels of contamination, namely 1,4-dioxane and perfluorooctanoic acid, which is more commonly known as PFOA. Levels were found in on-site groundwater above our current drinking water standards. So based on these findings, the site was then identified as a potential state Superfund site. So emphasis on potential, which means we commonly abbreviate it as a P site. So when sites are designated as P sites, that means they require a systematic investigation to determine if the site is the source of the contamination. This investigation is known as a site characterization, sometimes abbreviated an SC. And site characterizations are well defined on dec.ny.gov. I encourage you to go to that website, the search bar, to type in site characterization. They'll be a little more detailed, and I'll go into it, but I will outline what the site characterization usually entails. And it's usually three main steps with continuous evaluation throughout the whole process. And the goal, again, is to determine if the site itself poses a significant threat to human health or the environment. These three phases are a record search, which includes a thorough background review and a record check into the past uses and waste disposal activities at the site. It also includes sampling and surveys, which involve sampling of exposed waste, if there are any present, surrounding soil, sediment, and surface water. Additionally, in this phase, geophysical and soil gas surveys may be performed. And then it also includes groundwater monitoring. While we already have groundwater data at the site that DMM has collected during the Inactive Landfill Initiative, we'll want to potentially install more wells if the existing wells aren't sufficient to determine if the site's the source. So there may be additional wells installed. And, again, all of these phases of work are completed to determine if the site itself is the source of contamination. And just to follow up, we're aware that there are these numerous landfills in the area. So, I want to emphasize that sample locations are placed accordingly to determine if the site is itself the source of contamination or potentially an adjacent site could have a source. And again, throughout the entire process, data is continually evaluated to make informed science-based decisions. And we work with the Department of Health project managers who will be involved throughout the entire process to make any health-based decisions. And I'll also point out, if a source is found and a remedial measure can be implemented quickly to protect human and environmental health, we may push to implement what's called an interim remedial measure, which is sometimes abbreviated as an IRM. And then, what happens after we complete the site characterization? Well, hopefully we'll have enough information, and we should, to understand if the site, again, is the source. And if the landfill is the source, a remedial investigation will be required, and this will determine the full nature and extent of contamination, and there will be an assessment of possible cleanup and or remedy options. And if the landfill is not the source, then there'll be no further action with respect to the Queensbury landfill, aside from the continued post-closure monitoring and maintenance that the town would continue as prescribed with DEC, as Kevin alluded to that with regards to the post-closure monitoring that the other landfills have been taking place. So that's a quick summary of a site characterization. Again, I recommend going to dec.ny.gov, and you can reach out to me with any questions you have regarding the steps of the site characterization and what phase we're at with it. But with that, in the interest of time, I'll pass it on to Justin Deming, who's the regional chief with the Department of Health, to discuss the private well sampling efforts.
Thank you, Tony. Good evening, everyone. As Tony mentioned, my name is Justin Deming with the Bureau of Environmental Exposure Investigation in the New York State Department of Health. Many of you already know Faye Navratil and Wendy Keener, who have been conveying results to many of the folks within the community. So we spoke to them about your results. They work in this group closely with DEC on many sites across New York State in the environment. And tonight I'm going to give an overview of the private well sampling results that we have collected so far in the area. As Tony mentioned earlier, we're primarily concerned with some of the homes that are south of the landfill and to the west, because that's based on our of the area. The majority of the homes and properties we're looking at are along Mud Pond Road, Azure Drive, Rainbow Trail, and we also targeted some properties which are along Jenkinsville Road, Old Cronin Road, and Ridge Road. So overall, we've identified 88 wells for sampling, requested access from all of the owners, and have been able to complete sampling at 74 of those wells. There's still a handful of properties that we have not been able to get access to. So as mentioned earlier, 1,4-dioxane and PFAS were selected because they're elevated in the monitoring wells on site. If you recall, PFOA was detected at a level of about 240 parts per trillion, and 1,4-dioxane was detected at a level of 6 parts per billion. So these chemicals are referred to as emerging chemicals, and New York State has been extremely proactive in ensuring drinking water supplies are protected from them. Back in August of 2020, New York State adopted drinking water standards, otherwise known as maximum contaminant levels, or MCLs, for these compounds. These are set at 1 part per billion for 1,4-dioxane and 10 parts per trillion for either PFOA or PFOS. These are some of the lowest levels in the nation, and New York is the only state to have a drinking water standard that applies to 1,4-dioxane. So it's a very proactive approach. And these are standards that were developed for public drinking water supplies. Use them for guidance when evaluating public water supplies, like we're talking, or private wells, like we're talking about tonight. So private wells are generally not regulated when it comes to these type of chemicals. However, we use them to guide our decision making when we're evaluating the results. So to date, we have sampling results for, can you go back, Eric, please? Thank you. I just want to say it's been fantastic participation. Being able to get 74 of the 88 properties targeted has been great. The results continue to come in daily. We currently have results for 66 of these properties. And at this time, we've offered to provide bottled water. DEC is providing bottled water to 16 of the 66 because those levels are at or slightly above the drinking water standard of 1 part per billion for 1,4-dioxane. We have not seen PFOA or PFOS in any of the private wells exceeding the drinking water standards. So there are also 6 wells where we've recommended resampling because those levels are higher than half of the MCL or 0.5. And the majority of wells that have been sampled, which is 44, don't require any action at this time. So, that's not to say that as the environmental investigations continue and we learn a little bit more about the potential source of these chemicals, that won't change. But at this point, we're encouraged by the fact that, the majority of the wells don't need action, but there are a handful that we're continuing to provide bottled water. And to put this into perspective, I'd just like to say the MCLs, they're developed to be protected for everyone. They're even sensitive receptors such as children and pregnant women, and that's over the course of a lifetime. And they're not bright lines, which we expect health effects to occur above or below. Rather, they're set well below any levels that are known or suspected to cause health effects. So, when we know we have a source of these sort of chemicals in the environment that could potentially be affecting private wells, it's prudent to take action anytime we exceed an MCL. And in this case, it's a pretty straightforward action where we can provide bottled water to community members. And we're going to continue to work with DEC to better understand where these chemicals could be coming from. So overall, the highest levels detected, they don't pose a significant community when possible. So with that, I will turn it back over to Sean for some question and answer.
Thank you, Justin. And it goes without saying, the slide here about community outreach is something that we do take very seriously and pride ourselves on because we want a good, steady flow of accurate information headed out to the community. And sometimes that takes a little bit of time on our behalf to make sure that we're getting all the right facts and data and information assembled in a way that can then help you really understand exactly where we're going. And I hope tonight's overview with some of the experts on the team that's working on these sites can help answer some of the questions that you had just about how we came to be in your community, the steps we've taken so far, and then what the path forward is ahead of us. And some of that is going to be based on the data and information that's still yet to come in, as we talked about, based on the additional sampling that's underway. And our goal here is as that data comes in and as our scientific understanding of the area progresses and our understanding progresses, we'll be continuing to reach out to you. I hope that you've all received or seen a copy of our most recent community update. This is available on our website, and I know there's some hard copies in the town as well. We want to keep a steady flow of information going out, so we will be providing periodic updates. But it goes without saying, the next slide has some contact information, and we'll leave this up here so that you can get in contact directly with some of the key folks who are working on this that can answer your questions. So Eric, if you want to go ahead to that next slide. Again, these are some of the folks that you heard from tonight and some of the rest of the team members who are here to answer your questions, but are also available after this evening's presentation. So Supervisor, we want to just open it up for some questions now. Happy to start with you and other council folks, and then turn it over to any community questions and answers that we have as well.
All right, I want to thank DEC and Department of Health for giving that presentation. There's no such thing as too much information. And does town board have any questions before I go to the public?
Nothing additional.
Okay.
Supervisor, would I like to give you control of the screen, or is this?
Yeah, if you're all done with your presentation.
I just asked a question about the schedule of private well testing.
Sure. Kevin, do you want to take that one? Or Anthony?
Again, for the public.
Sean, this is Justin. I can speak to that. So
Okay.
the private well testing is an ongoing effort. And, you know, as I mentioned, we have participation of 74 of the 88 properties who have been targeted, which is a great outcome. And, you know, if folks are interested, we will certainly talk to them about where they are with respect to the focus area. And if they are not currently in an area, that we are sample will collect their information. And if the area expands based on more information, we'll certainly reach out. But it's basically an ongoing effort, and people should reach out to the project contacts that we're interested in.
When did it start?
The private well sampling began in August of 2020.
Thank you.
Thanks, Harrison.
Okay.
John, there's a chat question. Will you be testing the water in Mud Pond?
Will you be testing the water in Mud Pond?
I could answer that. Depending on the scope of the site characterization, I alluded to sediment and surface water samples. We usually co-locate those, and we do investigate surface water leading sites. We try to get representative samples to determine if there's any impact from surface water to the environment or human health.
So the answer is yes, Anthony?
I believe Mud Pond is proximate to the Queensbury landfill to the southwest, so I would say yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we're prioritizing obviously the drinking water sources and the groundwater investigation work, because primarily what we want to do is look at how people may be coming in contact or exposed to the contaminants that we're finding. So recognizing these are drinking water contaminants, we want to start with those water sources first, and that's why, as Justin said, we're prioritizing the private well sampling. And as Anthony spoke about, as our understanding continues to progress, we're going to build that out and take additional samples as needed, depending on which direction the science tells us to go based on the data that we're getting.
Okay. We do have a question that were typed in the question and answer. One is from anonymous attendee. If you could change that and give us a name, we can ask your question. The first question I'm going to read to you is from Pema Reed. Sibagagi site is below the town of Queensbury site, so groundwater flow downhill into gravel quarry at corner of Jenkinsville Road and Mud Pond Road. Is it possible that low ground level in gravel site enables groundwater flow to houses? Barium and cyanide are not PFOA or dioxane, but still could be a danger. So I think there's two questions there. So if I discern what this individual is trying to say, Pema, is it possible that low ground level in gravel site enables groundwater flow to houses? In other words, I think the characteristic of the terrain, the gravel pit being lower, is that something that would direct the groundwater flow in certain directions?
Yeah, that's definitely part of what our investigation work is really going to look at determining. But Kevin or Anthony, do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, I would just say that certainly the subsurface characteristics of how much till, how many boulders are down below the Queensbury landfill
or the other landfills in the area, and where bedrock is located, and the depth of the private well. I mean, that's all going to be evaluated. Whereas we might not have information on private well depths, we will on the wells that are currently installed on site and the wells that we install. So we'll understand the full depth and possible migration pathways for contamination from the site.
Okay, and we have another question. Do we answer both of Pamela's questions? Let me see. Oh, let's answer the first. The other question is, barium and cyanide are not PFOA or dioxane, but still could be a danger, question mark? She's asking.
Justin, do you want to take that one for drinking water contaminants is something that's good to look at?
Yeah, I can speak to that. So they certainly can be contaminants of concern depending on the site. In this case, the initial sampling of the landfill included a full analytical list, meaning that they look for all sorts of different chemicals, including barium and cyanide. And any of the chemicals which were found to be elevated in the landfill would have been looked at in the private wells. And in this case, that was just focused down to the PFOA, PFOS, proprietary chemicals, as well as dioxin. As we get additional information in from the other landfills, that may change, but we'll adapt the private well testing program as necessary going forward based on that information.
Thank you, Justin.
Okay, thank you. And again, I think I just want to point out that in the 20-year study and monitoring of this area, it has only been 2020 since we started looking at PFOAs and dioxane. Is that correct? So
that is correct. We built this sampling protocol into our efforts to look at landfill leachate, also looking at Superfund and brownfield sites around the state. Since the Clean Water Infrastructure Act was passed, which we authorized this, and our science has evolved to be able to test for these, we've built it into a lot of different sampling that we're doing around the state, including these landfills.
okay, thank you. And we have, I see 3 questions from Bremser. I'm going to assume it's Jennifer. First question, what is the expected timeline for concluding the responsible parties?
Yeah, a great question, and that's part of what I think Anthony spoke about with some of the additional investigation work that we're looking at with the other landfill sites, including the monitoring wells that we've put in. That data is going to provide us with a better understanding of how the groundwater flow in this area is working, and provide us with a better understanding of what potential sites are contributing to that. Based on the data that we have now on the Queensbury landfill, it's why we took the step to list that as a potential Superfund site. But our investigation is not just ending there. We really need more of that science and data to broaden out our understanding of the area and look to see what potentially responsible parties there may be.
So the timeline is, it's open?
It's open as the data comes back and as our experts that are on the Zoom here tonight evaluate that data and again improve our understanding of the area. And throughout every step of that process, we will keep the community informed. That is definitely one of our goals.
Okay, that's another part of Mr. or Mrs. Bremser's question. Another question from Bremser. Am I correct in understanding that SEBA leased their portion of the landfill from Queensbury landfill? How does that affect who is found to be responsible if the town owns SEBA landfill but leased it to them? I'm not sure what they're asking here. The town of Queensbury owns the property underneath the SEBA landfill, but we don't own the landfill. But do you have any further elaboration or knowledge of the SEBA landfill at this time? Anybody from DEC or DOH?
Well, I think as Anthony outlined, through the Superfund process, ownership questions like that are something that's involved in the in-depth research that we do in trying to determine potentially responsible parties. So that's definitely a question that we'll be researching based on records that are available as some of the digging that we do. But I don't know, Kevin or Anthony, to add on that preliminary at this time.
Yeah, I don't have any information relative to the ownership or how it started back in the day when they first started operating this. So,
but that's definitely something that we're going to be looking into is these efforts for us.
right.
All right. And one last question from Bremser. It's not really a question, I guess it's a statement, but I'll read it. Cyanide and barium have been found historically in the leachate from the SEBA site. All right.
John, on the chat section, there's a lot more questions. I don't know if you want to go through it. You know what it does.
Okay, so
And there's some, you guys are there. Issues.
Yeah, and Supervisor, just scanning some of these comments, I mean, anyone that has information with regard to ownership of the sites, or potentially past uses, is information that we also like to have. So I think between Kevin and Anthony and some of the other staff that are on here, if folks have information that they want to share with either DEC or DOH, we're always happy to take that. That definitely helps improve our understanding of the area as well, and could go to help advance our investigation. So we encourage folks to reach out directly to our staff with information like this or with questions like this, because we do want this conversation to continue after tonight as well.
all right, I see some questions. All right, Harrison already asked his question. Please describe the schedule of private well testing.
We did the next one too.
Yeah, we already did that, but it doesn't identify the name of anybody. Question, could contaminated water have reached Halfway Brook?
Sure. Well, I mean, that's part of our understanding that we're trying to evaluate. Again, I think as Kevin and Anthony both talked about, how we first look at the sites, get the information and data from the sites themselves to see what we can find out to determine groundwater flow. And from there, we work our way out. Again, we prioritize the drinking water sources here in the nearby area if groundwater is impacted, because public health is one of our first priorities when it comes to this. And again, as this private well investigation continues and expands and we get more of that data, that's going to let us know which direction we have to continue to sample and work our way out from there as that data comes back in. So the environmental sampling, both I think we talked about the quarry ponds and some of these other areas, are definitely on the horizon as this data comes back in.
All right, thank you. And some of these questions don't have names associated with them. If you retype them and put your name in, I can read them. All right, next question is from Pete Tarana. Do all your monitoring tests include tests for lead and hexavalent chromium? So,
I mean, as part of our routine post-closure monitoring programs, the metals are included. Yes.
okay. And if so, which you said yes, how do those results compare to the associated MCLs?
Historically, I don't think we've had any issues with those compounds from these landfills relative to the MCLs.
Okay. Here's another one. There's no name. Heather E., could you give me your last name for the sake of the record? Here's your question. As a note, we have a lot of wildlife in the mud pond habitat area that could potentially be affected by contaminated water in mud pond. Snapping turtles, Canadian geese, coyotes, deer, etc. I think it's just a no. Okay. Darcy.
I can speak to that.
Okay, go ahead.
Just to say that when we get the full site characterization completed, we've got to bring our fish and wildlife to evaluate that that data. So again, our pathways for potential exposure are human health and environment. So we do consider that.
And we have a question from Darcy Palmiciano. My water is just being tested tomorrow, which I was told 6 weeks for results. My home does have a CareSoft Elite Pro Ion Pro Flex Light system. Currently purchasing bottled water. Rainbow Trail, does this filtering system remove these toxins of concern? Again, it's a CareSoft Elite Clear Pro Ion Pro Flex Light system. Now, that's the best I can do. That's what she has.
You're Justin Fay, would you like to take that?
Yeah, Supervisor, I can feel that. So the results, we typically tell people about 6 weeks. The results have been coming around much more quickly, but we don't want to set a level of expectation of them. So I think in general, we're seeing results in 3 or 4 weeks, but you never really know. So as far as the treatment of these chemicals goes, I'm not familiar with the specific system that you have, but if you could send an email to one of the contacts or to the supervisor, you can pass along that system. Basically, the 1,4-dioxane, it's, we often use granulated activated carbon, such as Brita filter, which remove lots of different chemicals, organic compounds. 1,4-dioxane is a little bit more difficult. We have seen some effectiveness with in that name. It said it has an ion in there. That may be some type of reverse osmosis system, which may have some effectiveness. But we can find out more information if you want to send us more details. That'd be great.
Yeah, Justin, you're breaking up a little bit. All right, thank you.
Yeah, I think what Justin was trying to say is, anyone with specific questions like that about treatment systems that they may have, please do reach out to Faye or Justin or any of our Department of Health colleagues, and they can evaluate that with you and answer any of those specific questions.
Okay, thank you. Pat Mitchell, did DEC state that if it is determined that Town of Queensbury landfill is not the source, then they will not research any further?
No, I think what Anthony was trying to say with that question is that we know the Queensbury landfill has been determined to be a potential site, a potential Superfund site right now. If that investigation yields additional evidence that that is not the site that's contributing to the contaminants that we're finding in the environment for that specific site, we won't require any further action. However, what we're going to do and what we're getting with this other data is a better understanding of the sources or potential sources of the environment. So if it may not pan out that it's a Queensbury landfill but one of these surrounding sites, then our attention will be given to those based on the data and information that comes back from these sort of investigations.
Okay.
John, I have a question based on that. Councilman McNulty. So is it, you're going to just evaluate the town of Queensbury and then look at the other landfills? I understood that the other landfills were also being looked at kind of simultaneously. Is that what you guys said?
No, there's simultaneous work that's underway.
Thank you, sure.
Sites that we've outlined tonight.
Now here's one without a name. Here's one from Jay Petriquin. There are 3 businesses reasonably close to the north of these landfills. 2 gas stations, a restaurant. Are their water supplies at risk or under investigation? This is from Jay Petriquin and News 10 ABC.
So, Kevin, Justin, or Anthony, maybe one of you can speak to that, but what we know about groundwater flow in this area, if we go back to that map and you see where the landfills are and then where the sampling is taking place along Jenkinsville Road and those other roads, that's where we know and believe groundwater flow to be in the area based on the information that we've received so far. So we've concentrated our research around that based on the data that's come back. Again, as our understanding of the area progresses and changes with the additional information that we're getting, then we'll look to change where the areas in which we're sampling. But right now, based on groundwater flow and based on the information that we've got, that's why we're focusing on the areas that we're focusing on.
So, Sean, what you're saying is from the landfills, it looks like the groundwater flow is southward in nature.
Yes.
Okay.
Or Kevin or Anthony, I don't know if you want to clarify that in any way or expand on that.
Yeah, that's correct. South-southeast direction. So.
All right. Sean Rafferty.
Right now, I'll just add to that, those three businesses are regulated water supplies. So under the regulations that were passed in August of 2020, they'll be required to test for these emerging contaminants that we're looking for.
Okay, thank you. Sean Rafferty, why did it take so long to notify the affected residents that their drinking water was contaminated or could possibly be contaminated?
Well, I think as you heard tonight, there was a lot of data gathering that needed to take place. And as that data came back in, we had to look at getting a better understanding of the area. And what we've done throughout this process, and what we'll continue to do, is as we get additional data and sampling that leads us to believe there might be private wells impacted, we expand our search out and we contact those landowners and property owners directly that are served by, in this case, private wells. So our goal here is, again, to do this very systematically and stepwise based on the science and data and information that we get. It does take time for the laboratory results to come back and those to be reviewed and validated so that our understanding is truly one that's based on sound science. And from there, our experts that you're hearing from tonight take the next steps of evaluating whether or not there are any surrounding potential exposure pathways that we have to look at. And in this case, with it being drinking water that we're concerned about, we looked at drinking water wells in the area. And we focused primarily first, I think it's Justin and others spoken about, looking at that quarter-mile radius and a potential site, and then work our way out from there based on the data that we get back. And part of this was we did want to have, and want to continue this conversation with the community. We needed to get more data back so we could have an informed conversation with you all tonight. And we were glad that the supervisor gave us this opportunity to start this conversation. But again, we've put out the community newsletter. We have a lot of information that's on the website, and we're going to keep this conversation going after tonight with the community because we want to make sure that we keep informing you every step of the way of the actions that we're going to be taking.
All right, and Jay Petroquin, or TV10J, I think he's again, they're all three are within a half mile, I believe. He's talking about the northern properties, I assume. There's one with no name, another with no name. All right, Heather E. Let me see if I can.
It's just her last name, John.
Oh, Heather E. is Engwer, Engwer. Okay, Karen? Engwer. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Heather. Pete Tarana, how close is the nearest Queensbury public water supply, and has the town obtained estimates of the cost of supplying public water to Jenkinsville? I don't think that's a question to DEC or DOH, but I think it's a question to the town. The closest public water supply on Ridge Road, assuming that's going to be the main route for moving northward, is Haviland Road and Ridge Road. So We did a 1999 study of bringing water northward from that part of the town, including adjacent communities along Ridge Road, and the cost was quite high. But we're having CTML update and renew that study, and when they have that study prepared, we will share that with the public. Can the DEC and DOH help the town find financing for such an urgent need? Well, Susan and I had this talk, but anybody want to venture an answer on that? Is there any potential for financing or mitigation?
Yeah, I think Supervisor, I think you did a good job of answering the question, but all potential mitigation options are going to be on the table and something that we're going to continue to pursue with the town and with others as our initiatives progress here. And, part of the immediate mitigation measures is obviously bottled water, but then longer term options are something that we're going to evaluate, and then obviously looking at what the potential financing opportunities are, depending on who the responsible parties are and how we pursue this moving forward. So again, a lot of these answers are going to come in the future as our understanding of this site improves. But we're going to use every tool in the state toolbox here to provide assistance to this community and make sure clean water is provided.
All right. Sean Rafferty asks, how safe is it to shower, wash dishes, brush your teeth with water that contains high levels of 1,4-dioxane?
Sure, Justin, would you like to take that one?
Sure, I can speak to that. So at this point, the primary exposure pathway that we're concerned with is congestion through drinking water. Direct contact that you would receive through showering, washing dishes is a minimal exposure pathway. And as I mentioned before, these levels are right around the drinking water standard, and that's a level that is meant to be protected for everyone for a lifetime. So again, it's important to take actions where we can, but it's the showering and washing dishes is a very minimal exposure pathway.
So, Justin, I think from reading a report from DEC, there's no known health hazards from doing those kind of activities with the kind of levels we're talking about here, which are not necessarily high. They're they do exceed the New York State MCL. Is that safe to say, Justin?
That's accurate.
Okay. All right. Question from Melissa Angwer. Cadaret. Melissa Angwer Cadaret. Cadarette. A Mud Pond resident. Are our children and other community members safe to drink the water at the water fountains at Jenkinsville Park? Filled water bottles, baby bottles, etc.
So the water fountains and there's 4 wells at the park. Those results are still pending. Based on what we've seen in the community, these levels, even in the homes, are like I mentioned, the majority of the levels that we've seen, 44 of the property samples, do not exceed the MCLs. Where they do exceed, they're slightly above. That said, we're still awaiting the results for the park. Those will communicate them to the town and the community.
John, I've got a question. Are those water fountains open with COVID? I thought they were all closed.
They are closed, but the question, I'm sure, is
Just for future.
Yeah, for the future.
Thank you. And we do have a question from the floor, John.
Yes, sir. Please come forward to the podium. We've got more questions online. I'll get to you. But sir, please identify yourself for the record and then ask your question.
Yes, my name is Noel Harding. I live on Azure Drive, and I'm one of the residents currently being supplied with bottled water by the DEC. And at first, I wanted to thank everybody for taking the time this evening to talk to us and give us the ability to ask questions. I think it's been very informative. Recently, last weekend, I met with several of my neighbors. So we tried to get all of our questions together. And so the questions that I'm about to ask aren't necessarily just my questions, but those of my neighbors. Many of the questions have already been answered, so I'll try to skip over those as I get to them. My first question is, how long will the residents currently being supplied with bottled water continue to receive bottled water? Will it be until a permanent solution is in place?
Can you hear?
Yes, if your drinking water was impacted, our goal here is to provide mediation in that until a permanent solution is found. So those questions will continue to keep you posted every step of the way as those potential options are evaluated.
Next question is, I was confused by something in the presentation. You talked about a 1/4 mile radius. One of the neighbors who lives on Jenkinsville Road was denied testing. And what he was told is that his well is beyond a 1/2 mile. Even though his property is within a 1/2 mile, his physical well is beyond the 1/2 mile. So I was wondering, first of all, why the discrepancy? We heard a 1/4 mile during the presentation. I'm hearing 1/2 mile from the resident. Can you clarify that for me, please?
Sure. We start with that 1/2 mile or a 1/4 mile radius look initially around the site, and then we'll expand out from there. And if anyone has questions in the area between Kevin and Anthony with regard to where their homes may be, we'd be happy to entertain specific questions like that one-on-one to provide that understanding. And again, when as our understanding of the groundwater flow in this area is evolving, so is our area of testing, and that's why we did expand it out more broadly, just to get some more data points and sampling points that will again inform where we may go next in the area.
Yes, and I think that he was disappointed because his property seemed to be within that 1/2 mile radius, but the physical well was not. Should that be?
So definitely encourage him to reach out to either Kevin or Anthony here.
Okay. Thank you. Let's see. I think we already answered that one. And that one. I think we kind of heard the answer to this, but I'll just ask it again just so that I'm clear on it. What happens when you identify the source of the contamination? Will you hold that party or parties responsible to pay for running clean water to our neighborhood as part of the remediation?
Yeah, that's something that the state Superfund process, pursued through the Superfund process, provides us the authorities to do. So we will look at any and all potentially responsible parties and pursue them for both cost recovery of any state resources that we've invested in the process and hold them accountable for implementing any of the needed cleanup measures or measures to provide clean water to the community. That's a little ways down the road because we've got a few different steps in the process, as Anthony spoke about tonight, that we need to get that understanding on. But yes, eventually our goal here is to, as always, hold any potentially responsible parties accountable.
Right. Yes, I understand this is going to take some time, but I'm sure you can understand how anxious some of us are to get a clean water supply.
Definitely, and that's why we at least wanted to have this conversation tonight so that you knew exactly what we're doing, where we're going, and that this is going to be a continual conversation with you and other community members.
Good. I'm glad to hear that. Do you foresee a situation where you may not be able to identify the responsible parties?
Well, I can't really speak to that just yet because that is something that's very much underway right now. But if there are no responsible parties, because we have contaminants that are found in the environment, New York State does have the authorities to step in. Again, the Superfund process allows us to step in and take those mitigation measures. If we are unable to find a responsible party, then the state covers
Okay, thank you. In the community update, you state that the highest levels detected so far in the well water does not pose a significant health risk. I find this statement confusing. New York State sets water standards to protect the health of its citizens, and we know that at least 16 wells now are above that standard, yet you state this doesn't pose a health risk. Can you explain that apparent contradiction?
Justin or Faye, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, and actually, I think I'll turn this over to Tom Johnson to speak to.
Thanks.
Yeah, this is Tom Johnson. I'm with can you hear me all? Sean, can you hear me?
Yep.
I'm with the Department of Health, and I'm the Director of the Bureau of Toxic Substance Assessment. The health protectiveness of these standards is quite great. For 1,4-dioxane standard is set at a very low theoretical lifetime increased risk for cancer at just above 1 in 1 million. So it really provides a kind of a line in the sand that says, okay, this is a trigger for reducing exposure, but it's not a bright line that separates water concentrations that cause health effects from those that don't. It is still set at a level much lower than those that cause health effects. There's a great deal of health protectiveness to them. And in the case of 1,4-dioxane, it's set at a very, very low increased risk for cancer. So the point of the standard is that it does give us a level at which we can take action, we can make risk management decisions. And if this were a public water system, it would be a different circumstance. But in this case, it's an exposure that can be stopped by giving an alternative source of water, and that's why the water was given. It's something that can be done on a relatively practical basis. But again, the 1 part per million standard for dioxin is a trigger for reducing exposure, but not a trigger for causing health effects. Those types of things, health effects occur at much, much higher levels of exposure.
So could you clarify that for me, please? You say that much, much higher levels. So what types of levels are you talking about that would be of concern for a health risk?
Well, the way this is done for a chemical like 1,4-dioxane is that the concern comes from the fact that it causes cancer in laboratory animals when they're exposed to high levels over their lifetimes. Less is known about the health effects of these types of chemicals in humans and environmental exposure levels that might occur in drinking water. But what is done, what risk assessors do, what toxicologists do, is they take the animal data, they look at the dose response curve, they make adjustments for going from animals to human, and they come up with a level of drinking water that's associated with a very low increased lifetime risk for cancer for humans. It's done with risk assessment. It's based on the toxicity information and dose response modeling. So that's how these risk levels of water are derived. We don't know really the levels of drinking water that cause health effects in humans. We don't have that information. We don't know how high you would have to go. But we can, through the animal data, come up with a level of drinking water that, based on all of the science, is associated with a very low lifetime increased cancer risk. And 1 part per billion is very close to 1 in a million increased cancer risk level.
Thank you. Since you state that there are no human studies and that all this evidence is based on animal studies, should the Department of Health consider studying the prevalence of cancers, liver, and kidney diseases in residents immediately surrounding the landfills and compare that data to the general public to assess any potential impact this contamination may have had or is having on residents past or present?
Probably a better question for Justin, I would think.
Yeah. So the information that we have shows relatively low levels of exposure through drinking water. Like I indicated in what we've seen in the testing, is that it's right around the drinking water standard. There have been instances where we have seen higher levels of exposure, and the village of Boothick Falls is one where we had a drinking water supply that had higher than expected levels, and in that case, there was some benefit in looking at things like particulate compounds. There will not be much utility as far as we know, given the levels that we've seen.
Yeah, my thought was just, since we're extrapolating data from animal studies, I just thought that it might be a benefit to actually study the residents in this area.
Well, if there's a question there, I think Noel are you asking if there have been or?
No, I'm just asking if they would consider it.
All right. So Noel's saying, would this study lead to a study, and I'm going to try and paraphrase. So
sure.
Lead to a study of the people that live, let's say, within a half mile of these 4 landfills, and see if there's been any health issues for that particular group.
Well, I think that with a population this size, which is, if you're talking about a certain distance away from the landfills, usually the number of people is just really too small to have what they call statistical power. It would be very hard to distinguish cancers in the general population for this population to cancers that would occur in the general population. I mean, it would everybody's lives are so complicated. They are exposed to other types of chemicals. They have predispositions to various types of health conditions, and they occur in the general population. It would be very hard in a population of this size to do a study that would show a significant difference or statistically significant difference of those types of health effects on it, because the population is just so small. It's very hard to detect those types of differences in such a small population. Something that we could consider, but generally with small numbers of people, those studies are unlikely to produce meaningful results because of the size of the population.
Okay, thank you. We've heard that.
Actually, I'd like to add to that quickly. We do want to encourage both some of the community, if they have specific health concerns, to reach out to our experts. Reach out to Faye or to Tom, and we can get specific answers.
Okay, thank you. We've heard that people whose wells that have tested negative are being told that there is not going to be any follow-up testing. My understanding is that results can change dramatically in a few months, and what may be negative now could be positive in a few months. Is there a reason why there is not going to be any retesting of these wells?
Well, I don't think we've ruled that out necessarily just yet. I think in the immediate short term, if we've got data on your private well that was not detected for the contaminants that we're looking for, we focused our investigations elsewhere. But as Anthony said, as part of the site characterization work that would be done, and as part of the determination of the nature and extent of the contaminants, we're going to look at that data. We're going to assess groundwater flow, and then we'll look to see if there are different monitoring schedules that we want to put certain wells on, and all that will be communicated directly with landowners individually. And those are all great questions moving forward, because we want to give everyone the peace of mind to know that it's not just that we've taken one sample and we're going to leave. It's we've taken one sample, we've got the important data point, we're trying to figure out the rest of it, and then we're going to go back and determine what we need to do in the future. future based on all the data as soon as we collect it.
I think that's good to hear, because when my neighbors heard about my experience with my particular well, they were concerned about how great the fluctuation was. When my well was first tested, my 1,4-dioxane level was 2.4, and then subsequent testing 4 months later, it was 7.7. So you can see with that substantial a shift, somebody could conceivably, who's testing negative now, be well into positive territory a few months from now. So I'm glad to hear that you still have an open mind about retesting these wells.
Definitely, and it's all based on science, and it's how we proceed. And again, our understanding of these two is we have to look individually at each well. In some cases, it may be used less or more, so that changes the levels that you may see based on the use and flow of the groundwater by those wells. But all that is going to be uncovered by our experts that you're hearing from. And again, great questions. We want to make sure that folks that you get that information as our understanding changes.
There's a new development planned for Jenkinsville Road. It's currently on hold, but should they decide to proceed, what impact will 19 new houses have on our current water situation?
I'm not familiar with the development you're speaking about, and whether or not it's going to be serviced by public water or if they would be on private wells.
They would be private wells.
We do private wells in the area. That's obviously something that we're going to want to take a look at based on our understanding of the area. So that's something that will be evaluated moving forward.
Let's see. I have a couple of questions for the town board, if I could ask those. Would that be acceptable?
Are they related to this? Because we
Yes.
do have another town board segment where you're going to be.
Yes, they're related to this.
Okay.
You mentioned that CT Malley is updating the previous engineering plans for running town water to our area. Do you know when they project that will be completed?
John, do we have any idea, Muncie, do we have any idea about when we think that this study of extending the water district northward might be completed?
I can check with Jim Edwards tomorrow on the status of that, but the project work just commenced a week ago. So, I think it's several weeks out before he's going to start to look at making modifications to that report. So,
all right. So,
okay. I just have one final question. Who determines what the solution is going to be for bringing clean water to our neighborhood? So we've heard some various options from running town water to our neighborhood to drilling wells in another area of the town and running that water to us. So who's going to make that decision? Will it be the town board, the DEC, the residents impacted by the contamination? Do you have any insight into how this decision is going to be made?
Well, that's all part of the evaluations that take place as the Superfund process progresses. And again, as we identify potentially responsible parties and look at what the long-term options are. Again, if the town is evaluating that with their own consultants at this time, that's something that we'll work with the town on, and again, work with the community on as well. But anything that's conducted as part of the Superfund process, all decisions in that process are open for public comment, and we'll make sure that we're engaging the community every step of that way as different evaluations are conducted for any cleanup actions. And those cleanup actions aren't just for removing the contaminants from the ground, but it's also for providing clean water should it be done under the Superfund program.
Okay, great. Thank you for your time.
all right. Thank you, Noel. All right. We do have some other questions. Well, Christina Tucker, I have a town of Queensbury specific question regarding the water. Is it better to ask the forum or contact? Well, if you want to ask it here, fine. If you don't, you can always go to the town website and go to the town supervisor's office ask the question, and I will try and get the answer to you. Okay? Darcy Pomiciano. My concern is my dogs drinking puddles of water in my yard and have been vomiting lately. So, surface water.
So, what we know of the area, and again, our understanding is still progressing on this, but we're primarily concerned about the groundwater contamination that we're finding. I don't think we have any evidence as of yet that there is any surface water concerns associated with what we're finding so far. But I would encourage you to contact your vet with specific animal-related health questions at this point in time. And again, get in touch with DOH and our DEC experts here with regard to where your property is, so that we can take that into consideration as we look at any other surface water impacts or any impacts that could be happening on your yard. But primarily right now we're focused on the groundwater.
Okay. Let me see. All panelists. Well, they don't give a name. I can't ask the question. Let me go back through now and see if anybody has given their name, and then chat. Oh, chat. Let me start from the top. One new message. Wait a minute.
Yeah, and Supervisor, I think it goes without saying, obviously, if there are questions that we didn't get to tonight, this is not going to be our only opportunity to talk to members of your community. We've provided contact information both on our community update and on the slides here tonight, where folks can get in touch with DEC or DOH officials. Our doors are always open. We want to keep this conversation going. So if there are questions that didn't get answered tonight or the folks have, we encourage you to reach out directly to our experts here.
And I will do that. Pamela, she says, please ask my question. But
John, it's above. The question is, would DEC and DOH, this is from Firma Frida Reed. The question is, would DEC and DOH staff take showers or wash their veggies with dioxin in water?
Well, I would follow the recommendations from Justin Deming and my DOH colleagues directly. So with regard to this, I listened to everything they've said today, and I would feel confident that if I was in this impacted area, what they've told me, I would follow their advice. So Justin or Faye or Tom can speak more on that. You are the experts, and I think you provided a good overview tonight of what folks can expect.
No, that's it. That's exactly accurate. I think a big part of what we're trying to do is really inform, educate people on what these levels mean and what they mean with respect to exposure. And in general, ingestion is the primary exposure pathway we're concerned with. So showering and washing veggies, are minimal exposure pathways. And the short answer, given what I know about it, I wouldn't have an issue with doing either of those things.
And Jay Williams, and please, if your name appears that way, you have to give me your first name, Jay or John or whatever it is. I'll read your question though, because your last name is Williams. The big question is, how long will this litigation take for the families dealing with this health hazard? 1, 2, 5, 10 years?
Well, I think we're very early on in the process now, as we talked about tonight. It's hard to put a specific timeline or time frame on it. What we really need first is to gather additional data on the ground that's going to enhance our understanding of the area and whether or not we need to take additional mitigation measures right away to provide bottled water and reduce the potential exposures here. And then from there, we have to look at the nature and extent of the contamination, evaluate the potentially responsible parties and then pursue them through the Superfund program for the cleanup options that may be necessary. So each of those steps in the process lend itself to continued community conversations. And again, we're going to continue to put out community updates every step of the way as that progress is made. We're going to have additional community forums like this and at different phases of the process as well. And we want to keep you informed of those steps that we're going to be taking. So again, it's a very scientific approach. It's very stepwise, and it's going to take however long it takes, because at the end of the day, our goal here is to keep you protected and get the environment cleaned up, and we're going to do that for however long it takes.
Okay, and I think I have one more question. And Tim, did I miss any?
I got one from Harrison Ford, Councilman Freer, regarding how many other sites in the state, New York State, have been determined to have issues with this meeting the new standard.
Sure. Well, unfortunately, like your community, we're uncovering new issues like this throughout the state on a regular basis as more community supplies test for the MCLs, or as our investigation work at Superfund site, brownfield sites, and landfill sites continue around the state. There's a lot of information on our website about these investigations that are underway, and you can get a good handle and sense of where in other parts of the state that we're engaged similarly in your community. It is unfortunate that we have built this track record, but hopefully your residents tonight can have a little confidence in the state that we are doing this very systematically across the state. We're building a lot of expertise here within the state to respond quickly and efficiently anytime contamination is found. And we know that there are a lot of questions, which is why we wanted to start this conversation tonight. That's why we put out the community newsletter. And again, as we progress here, we can keep this conversation going.
All right, I have one more question from Tracy Fitz. Is DEC DOH considering providing full house water treatment systems, i.e. reverse osmosis or other treatment that works for 1,4-dioxane for area households with contaminated drinking water well?
Sure, that's definitely one of the options that we're going to be looking at and evaluating as part of the longer-term mitigation measures that we're going to take. Bottled water is the first step, and then we look at the availability to connect to a public water supply, or the availability of putting an in-house treatment system on. For 1,4-dioxane, the process to take that out of water supplies is something that's continuing to evolve and expand as that research expands. And there aren't any specific treatment systems that have been certified for in-home use just yet. But again, we're going to evaluate all the different options as part of our process moving forward to figure out what the right long-term step is to make sure everyone has access to clean water that's effective.
All right. Deep Palm, I wish you would please, if that's what, I need a name, first name and last name, but I'll go ahead. Who defines minimal effect? Showering. Our pores are absorbing these toxins. I guess the question is who defines minimal effects? And I thought that, Justin had answered that, but.
So this is Tom Johnson from the Health Department. I think I'll try to address what the question is asking. Justin said it was a minimal exposure pathways. When compared to drinking water, a secondary exposure pathway such as that which would happen through showering, bathing, and that can happen through the skin or inhalation. With some chemicals, like very volatile chemicals, they have done modeling studies as well as actual studies to suggest that based on a lot of different conditions, the length of the shower and how hot the water is, whether or not there's ventilation, there's some additional exposure that can occur. For 1,4-dioxane, it's not exactly a volatile organic chemical. It's sort of on the cusp between a semi-volatile and a volatile organic chemical. The models that predict exposure for this chemical suggests that at these levels, it's just exactly as Justin says, the additional exposure that would happen through a shower, through bathing, is that it can happen. It's a small amount of exposure, but it's so very, very small with respect to that which you would get through ingesting the water, and even smaller with respect to exposures that would likely be a concern for health effects. So that's an attempt to try to address what I think that question might be asking.
All right, well, thank you. Is there anybody present? Please identify yourself for the record. And
Kathleen Moore from the Post-Star. Sean, could you explain the communication path? When DEC did the first testing of the groundwater using the town of Queensbury's monitoring wells, did they notify the town at the time of the results or that they were doing this study? Who did they notify and when?
You're a little hard to hear there, Kathleen.
My apologies.
Kevin, if you want to go through the steps that we take on any landfill site with communicating with the owners, operators, and locality, I think that's what Kathleen was getting at.
Yeah, I was trying to find out who you did you notify the town and who did you notify and when?
Yeah, normally our process, and that's what we did in this case, is we reached out to the supervisor to let him know, what was happening and what we were up to. A lot of these sites, some of these sites, they're actually, the municipal sites are a little easier because we can just reach out to the supervisor. We've had some sites where they're actually privately owned and they're not even owned by the same person that operates the landfill anymore. So in those cases, it's a little more difficult. But yeah, the standard practice is to reach out for a municipal site about the supervisor.
And did you let him know what the results were when you got them?
From the initial sampling?
Yeah.
Yes.
Do you know when approximately that happened?
Do I know when it happened? I don't know.
I mean, like, were we talking like spring of last year? Or are we talking January of last year? August?
Kathleen, what I can do after this is work together with the team, put together a timeline of that so you can see the steps that we've taken.
Fabulous.
Communicate with Maureen right on that. I'll make sure we get you those answers.
Thank you very much.
any other questions from anybody present? Any questions from anybody watching YouTube? You want to call in? I think the number's there, right, Joe? Oh, area code 518-761-8225. What's that?
McLean is asking if it's safe to use water humidifiers.
Oh, the question is, do they have a name of the person?
Tom McLean.
Tom McLean?
Yep.
Can they use the water in the humidifiers?
Justin, one of our DOH colleagues, you want to take that? With regard to aerosolization,
there would be no issue with water.
No results. Is there did anybody answer that? I didn't catch it.
They said there would be no issues.
Yeah, no issues. All right. So thank you, Tim. All right, and let me just say for the public record that anything that was shared with me, I shared with the town board, and anytime there was a problem, that was shared with the public immediately. So I want to thank the DEC and Department of Health. Do we have any other questions, Pete? Joe, I mean. All right, I see no more here. I think we've got them all, town board.
I really appreciate the presentation. And, to Sean, very well prepared, and your staff came through to show that they're truly interested in supporting the community, and especially the residents that are having to deal with this issue personally. So for me personally, I want to thank you and your staff for the work that you did to prepare this. A lot more work to be done, but thanks for what you've done so far. Thank you.
No, for sure. We're glad that we could join you tonight. Obviously, we wanted to have this conversation sooner rather than later. We did need to get a few more data points collected and, focus on our work on the ground. But, moving forward, we definitely want to continue this conversation. Happy to come back to a future town board meeting. As we progress through the pandemic, we'll look at doing public availability sessions and other forums to provide that one-on-one interaction as well. But again, we've provided our contact information here tonight. Feel free to reach out to any of our DEC and DOH experts, and we want to keep this conversation going with you and other community members.
And thank you, Sean, and thank you everyone else from DOH and DEC that tonight, and we're all working together for the same purpose, and that's to protect the health of our residents, protect the health of our environment, and we do want to put in place, if there's problems identified, we want to put into place a safe, long-term drinking water solution as quickly as we can, and want to ensure a comprehensive assessment of the problem. And we're going to work with you to conduct that assessment, and hope we'll get some sufficient, reliable data, and we'll analyze that. And I would like to think our community has full confidence that we'll all be working together on their behalf moving forward, and especially for those residents in the Jenkinsville area. So we appreciate the DEC and DOH and all your efforts in providing bottled water to those 8 homes. And we will continue working closely with the individuals. And again, I have been taking emails and we've been putting an Excel sheet together for those people that live in the area and want to know what's going on for the sake of information. When I get the information, I share it with them. And we're working with DEC. So DEC is sharing it with them. So they may get the information more than once, but I think that's okay. So again, looking forward to working with you, and thank you very, very much for this presentation tonight. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
You're welcome to stay around and see the rest of the meeting if you want.
See any takers?
Click.
Thank you, sir. We'll let you get to it.
That'll work, yeah.
Wow, I guess it will, right?
And then there were 2.
Always have trouble with this. Yeah.
Still on.
Wow. All right, I'm thinking again. There's no off button on it. There's an on. I still didn't do it, did I? Okay. All right. Well, I thought that was very good, and we'll likely have more of those in the future. Okay. The next item on our agenda we have 9 resolutions. I will briefly describe the 9 resolutions, and if any member of the public wishes to have a question or a comment, share that with us on these resolutions. By the way, we're on YouTube. We're going to be on Look TV. We have Zoom. It's being recorded. Plus, we have our natural recordings that are done. So there's multiple ways that you can re-see this meeting if you would. But moving on to the resolutions. First resolution, please, Karen. Sure. Resolution 2.1.
Yes. Resolution authorizing engagement of Cheap Pete's Lawn Care to mow certain abandoned or neglected properties in the town of Queensbury.
All right, the 6 properties we have: 35 Fox Hollow, 3 Wagon Trail, 404 Dix Avenue, 1 Edgewater Place, 14 Far Lane, and 24 Pinello Road. And we will give the final notice. And if they fail to clean up their properties within 10 days, the town will cause such action to be taken, and the cost thereof will be assessed by the town board on the real property. And assessment shall constitute a lien and a charge on the real properties until paid or otherwise satisfied or discharged, and shall be collected in the same manner. So this is for a period of 5 months, hiring Cheap Pete's Lawn Care for a total amount of $340 per month. So now this is an amount not to exceed $1,700 for those properties. 2.2.
Resolution authorizing engagement of Cheap Pete's Lawn Care for one-time cleanup of abandoned or neglected property.
All right, 35 Fox Hollow needs extra attention, and that extra attention includes a downed tree, limbs, leaves, debris that need to be cleaned up, and this is authorizing Cheap Pete's Lawn Care to clean that up for $325. 2.3.
Resolution authorizing seeking of bids through New York State Office of General Services Procurement Program or local bid for truck for water department.
Okay, this is a bid for a truck. It'll be a 2021 or newer half-ton pickup truck, and we'll use the New York State Office of General Services Procurement Program, and this is to replace a 2009 vehicle with 91,500 miles on it that had difficulty passing its most recent inspection. 2.4.
Resolution authorizing appointment of Steve Johnson as Water Wastewater Field Operations Manager.
All right, Scott Bernard, who is currently in this position, will be retiring sometime in late spring. So Chris Harrington, who is the water superintendent, wastewater director, wants a succession plan. So he wants to hire somebody to be able to replace Scott Bernard. And he did interviews, and he found someone he liked very much. And this guy is Steve Johnson. And he has all the skill sets to be able to do this job. But he would like to work with Scott Bernard a while to get his, get used to the job and what it includes. So this is to hire Steve Johnson. 2.5.
Resolution setting public hearing on proposed local law of 2021 amending Queensbury Town Code relating to dog control.
All right. Again, this was before the board. Kathy and Jackie White. Jackie did a wonderful job here. We worked with Kathy Cloutier, who is does our dog control for SPCA of upstate New York, and she does a great job. And Caroline Barber oversees all this. This went through the gauntlet. So what you're seeing before you tonight went through a lot of work to get there for a new law, updated law on dog control. 2.6.
Resolution authorizing adoption of the State of New York Deferred Compensation Plan.
All right. What they had for the Deferred Compensation Plan, and this is volunteer, this is for the workers in Queensbury that wish to have an additional compensation plan for their retirement. This is their choice. We worked with them. We have a committee. I'm on the committee. We had Empower, which was Mass Mutual, and they have decided that they feel better going with the deferred compensation plan for employees of the state of New York. And so that's what this resolution is, approving them to go ahead and do so. That's their choice. 2.7.
Resolution authorizing promotion of Jennifer Birchie France from Recreation Program Assistant to Assistant Director of Parks and Recreation.
That really ruined my day when I heard Lori O'Shaughnessy was going to retire. She is one of the outstanding workers here in the town. She's quiet, she's stealthy, but if you ever look in her office, she is very, very busy. She helps our director, Steve Lovering, manage this system, this universe that everyone enjoys, our park and recreation system, our trails, our parks, our boat launch centers. It's all managed by them. And then not to mention the other hundreds of activities that we offer our residents as behalf of the Park and Rec Department. Lori was responsible for organizing, creating, and making them happen. Having said that, one of the other people that knows how to make things happen is Jennifer Birchie France. She's wonderful. The Town Recreation Commission reviewed their options, and it was clear to them that the natural succession to Lori O'Shaughnessy would be Jennifer Birchie France. So they unanimously approved her promotion to the soon-to-be vacant Assistant Director position and have accordingly requested that the town endorse this appointment. And this will be for an annual salary of $61,500. That was reviewed by a Human Resources Department, and they claimed that that was the appropriate amount. So 2.8.
Resolution authorizing release of escrow funds to Cerrone Builders, Inc. in connection with dedication of Opry Circle and Cerrone West Mountain Road subdivision.
All right, so when a developer wants to put in a development, they also have to put in all the utilities, the infrastructure, including the roads. The roads have to be built to our specifications. But the final coating on the road, the final pavement, isn't done until the bulk of the construction work is done, so they don't ruin the finished surface. So that the finished surface is relatively free of construction activities. We force the developer to put money aside, that should they not put the final coating on the road, it would be sufficient for our people to go ahead and put the coating on the road. All right, Cerrone put in the Opry Circle development and put $25,800 in cash escrow. That development is pretty much built out, built up, and the heavy construction is done. So the developer would like their money returned. And so the highway superintendent went and reviewed the road, reviewed the specifications, and authorized his recommendation to the town board to release the $25,800 held by the town in accordance with the escrow agreement. And 2.9.
Resolution approving audit of bills warrant of April 20th, 2021.
Okay, with payment date of April 20th, totaling $909,267. Those are the 9 resolutions before the town board tonight. Is there anybody in the audience that would like to speak to or comment on any of the 9 resolutions before the town board tonight? Is there anybody? Anybody raise your blue hand if you have any questions? Anybody over with you, Joe? Anybody want to call in a question on any of the 9 resolutions? Is 761-8225, area code 518-761-8225. All right, while we're waiting for any of the public who might be interested in making comments, we want to give them time to do so. Any thoughts on behalf of the town board on any of the 9 resolutions?
John, just on 2.8, I have 3 circles right around my house, so I went over and the road is fine. So
Yeah.
there's no issues with, from my perspective, I'm approving that.
All right, thanks for going over and looking at it. Anything else? Anyone that needs to be pulled for roll call?
No.
Okay. Seeing nothing on behalf of the public, I guess we're all set to consider a motion to approve resolutions 2.1 through 2.9.
Motion?
A motion made by Councilperson McNulty.
I had a question first.
Ooh.
Well, you can ask your question. Let's get it on the floor. Seconded by Councilperson Perot. Now it's on the floor. Question.
On 2.5, the dog control.
Yeah.
There was, and I can't, it's not pulling up on my laptop, but there was some text in there that just read kind of odd to me, where there was a section about an individually having control of their dog, but it kind of read like the dog had the control of the owner.
That's not my dog.
It was, it's wordsmithing, but, I'll bring it up with legal counsel to see if it's something that's just wording.
Yeah, well, it's a good point, George, that the town law said that your dog is to be in your control, the owner's control, at all times.
Correct.
So
I don't think Councilman Ferrone is suggesting any substantive problem. I think it's suggesting there might be some awkward wording. So it's all your proposed tonight to schedule the public hearing. I would encourage you to bring the awkward wording to our attention, and we'll take a look.
Oh, yeah. Well, thank you for bringing that up. Let me clarify that you're right. It's to schedule a public hearing, and the public hearing will be on May 3rd. And I didn't bring that point out. So thank you, Town Council Shackner, and thank you, George.
Yep. Actually, there was another point while legal counsel kind of jogged my memory. There was another piece in that resolution and this change in the law that talked about loud and barking dogs. And we've spoken in the past about a noise ordinance, and some of those have come from residents who've complained about barking dogs. And this says that barking dog under this rule will be dealt with.
Yeah, that's a good point. Thanks for bringing that up.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, just so that people need to know. And another inspiration to this, and we will have a public hearing on May 3rd, is the prosecution of these cases. The wording helps us to take the dog owners and be able to try and have a little bit of courtroom maneuvering to try and force them to be in control of your dog at all times.
Right.
Okay. Any other questions? Those are
other than that. I mean, it was well written. Yeah. I think it's a good thing, positive thing.
Yeah. All right. So we do have a motion and a second. Roll call vote on those 9 resolutions, please, Karen.
Sure. Councilperson Medavere?
Yes.
Freer? Is he still on? Is Harrison still on?
Harrison?
I don't see him there.
Harrison was having trouble with his phone.
Oh, okay. Councilperson Ferrone?
Yes.
McNulty?
Yes.
Stroud?
Yeah. All right. Passes unanimously. Those present were going to vote. Yeah, Harrison was there. He caught up trying to travel at the same time, and he said something screwed up with the Southwest Airlines tickets or something. But All right. So next is correspondence. Any correspondence?
I just have one. I have the supervisor's report for community development and building codes for the month of March of 2021 on file in the clerk's office.
Okay, thank you. All right, the next is privilege of the floor. Anybody that wants to speak to town issue, this is your opportunity to do so. So I'll give you a few minutes. Again, you can call in your question. You just have to have a caller ID so I can identify the caller. 518-761-8225. Or Zoom. You raise your blue hand. I'll put it on attendees here. Or question and answer you can type in. You got a lot of questions. Anybody present? Okay. Recording pause. What's that? Well, I probably put 3 hours and we can see that.
Oh, we've only been 2.
Well, in any event, we're not going to get the whole meeting on Zoom, but we do have it on YouTube. We will have it on Look TV, and it is recorded. And I'll put down what we do have on Zoom. So I guess that's it for the evening, except for some more discussions. Anything, Tony?
Just some things on Jenkinsville. And one of the things about Jenkinsville is that we refer to it as Jenkinsville. It is the Jenkinsville area, but I did receive a phone call last night from one of my constituents that's very upset that we keep referring to it as Jenkinsville because he lives on Jenkinsville Road and he is not part of what's going on. His water apparently is fine. But he's upset that we keep referring it to Jenkinsville. I don't know if at this point the can't take it back. But I did tell him that I would say something that as homes come up for sale in the Jenkinsville area, the best thing, of course, is to, if you're interested in buying a home, purchasing a home, to reach out to the town board, to us, to the DEC, DOH, get your questions answered. I do know one property that is went on the market in this real estate market. I think you could pretty much sell anything, and it's my understanding that the house is under contract. It went under very quickly. This gentleman wants to put his house on the market. He's very worried that the house isn't going to be worth much. I don't believe that. I think that and I hate to bring it up, but reassessments went out, and people in the Jenkinsville area are very upset. How could you do this to us now with everything going on? And I spoke to Terry Ross, as did you, and she explained we can't, single anyone out. It has to be uniform across the board. And I did go through the assessments. I mean, not that I'm an assessor, but I'm a realtor, and I think that the assessments over there are very fair. And after seeing how this one house responded to the market, I don't think there's much to worry about there as far as the value of your home goes. I also wanted to make a comment that, as I told you 2 weeks ago, I went around and delivered, letters to people. And it was a Monday that I went out just before this meeting. And it was a tough time for me, but I have to be honest, that was the end of it. After that, every other time I went out, people were very kind, very cordial, asked great questions. As you know, John, it did take me almost 2 weeks to get all the letters out because I would go out for an hour or two and get to meet with 5 people. But the folks over there, after that, the first few times that I went out were great. They were very, very kind, except for one very, very strange exchange with somebody. I'll never understand what that was all about. But beyond that, everybody over there was wonderful. great people. And, I think at this point they get it that we're really doing everything we can to fix this problem for them. And it's very unfortunate. But I don't think anybody can point fingers and say that we're not doing everything, humanly possible to get, this problem taken care of as quickly as possible. So just be a little bit patient. But again, I can't stress enough how kind everybody was the second half of my venture. So I just wanted to let them all know that I appreciate that very much. It made a difference for me. It really did. It was, the difference between dreading going out and actually going out and coming home and being in a relatively good mood. I mean, the message isn't easy, but these folks made it great. So I wanted to thank them.
As a matter of fact, most of them knew about their situation before we knew.
Yep. And it's unfortunate because a few questions seem to be pointed at us tonight. We responded when we knew what was going on. We responded immediately. I don't think some people think that way or feel that way, but I can tell you as soon as we knew about it, we jumped in with both feet. And so I don't know why these questions keep coming up. We are very transparent, and John, you are. So I just don't understand why the question keeps being raised. It's not that we kept anything from anybody. Why would we? Because it's out in the open now, and it would make us look like a bunch of fools if we had done it any other way. But I think that once we received word from Chris Harrington that something was wrong, we got right on it. So that's the best I can say there.
Yeah. Anything else, Tony?
Nope. Thank you.
Thank you, George.
A couple of things. I mean, under the category of Queensbury road safety, and in fact, I'll throw this one back at Tony. I know you're working on a reduction in speed on Moon.
Yes.
Moon Hill, is it?
Yes.
Okay, road.
Yep.
I know also working on one for Chestnut Ridge. We had a discussion about that. The only other thing I was going to mention is, as people are driving around town, we all go up and down Quaker Road, and we've been watching those signal lights go in. There's a set at the corner of, or an intersection of Glenwood and Quaker.
And Bay and Quaker.
I understand that one is going to be up and running within the next, I think, 4 or 5 weeks, I think is what Dave Dool said, Highway Superintendent. I know they're working on the one at Bay. I've seen them working there. And then for folks walking the trails between Rush Pond and Halfway Brook, I believe the construction of the crosswalk on Aviation Road is supposed to start next month. I saw that on the engineering report.
Yeah.
That's it.
All right, George, thanks. All good stuff. Tim?
2 weeks ago, when I was away stuck in Phoenix, I talked about looking forward to coming back to being able to sit in this building again. One thing we haven't mentioned is at one point we had 76 people signed in on Zoom to listen into this meeting, plus the people we have here. I think that's goes yeoman's terms in terms of you're wanting to get the word out to the community, and that we're getting out, that we're here to talk. Give us a call, and you can participate. I look forward when we can have more people in the room that we can talk to and get their feelings. I'm getting lots of calls at home now in terms of folks in Fourth Ward, so they know I'm here now. I owe them some answers, and I'm working on their questions. But it's good to be back, and look forward to supporting the town and the town board as we go forward with the town's issues.
Okay. That's all we ask for is fairness and accuracy and reporting what really happened without trying to sensationalize it. We're on top of it. We're going to try and remediate it. We're trying to assess it. We're going to work with the Department of Health and DEC. And they don't know the source of the cause of the problem. That's the fact. So we're going to study. We're going to try and find out the sources. We're going to remediate those. We're going to try and mitigate the water. We're going to try and get there. All right. I just have a few small things because I know we want to get home. Yes, short one.
Small, right?
Again, I got to announce the residential lawn and yard pickup. because, and again, this is for grass clippings and trees, and your leaves and grass clippings have to be in bags that are biodegradable. You can buy them at any hardware store, at any of the big boxes. If you put it in plastic, they won't be picked up. It's got to be put in a biodegradable bag. And the bags can't be over 50 pounds. And that's pretty tough to get at 50 pounds, filling it up with this stuff. But and you can't put in trash, rocks, sand, stone. Don't put that in with it. It's got to be biodegradable. Limbs, no longer than 8 foot and no wider than 4 inches in diameter. Put them by the side of the street, not in the street, on the side of the street. All right, so Ward 3 begins this week.
Today.
Ward 4 will be May 3rd, our next town board meeting 2 weeks from now. Ward 2, May 10th, a week after that. Ward 1, May 17th. And if they have time, they will go back through. Doesn't mean, they want to get the bulk of it now, but they will go back through and pick it up if they have the time and the work for it. All right, so I wanted to announce that. Also, Warren County Household Hazardous Waste Collection. There's going to be 2 days that you can bring oil-based paints, corrosive cleaners, fluorescent bulbs, things like this. And one is this Saturday, right here, over in the Highway Department area, from 9 to 2. The other one is July 24th, up in Warrensburg on Main Street. And it's open to all Warren County residents, okay? Either one. So if you can't make this Saturday's, then you can shoot for July 24th. They're not looking to latex paint, okay? And they're not looking for munitions. They won't latex paint. You can open the can, let it dry, and then just bring it to the transfer station. Latex paint is not used. So batteries, we already have a recycling center at our transfer station for batteries and things like that, in case you didn't know. All right, they would prefer, it's on the town website, which takes you to the county website. They would prefer that you did a waste day registration form a little ahead of time so they knew basically what was coming. Okay. You want more?
No.
That's it, folks. All right. So anything else for the good of the order?
No.
All right. Thank you, Deputy Town Clerk Karen O'Brien. Thank you, Town Council Mark Shackner. Thank you, Town Board. Thank you, public. And everybody else that attended. I'd like to thank Joe at Pet Productions here, and Joe Barlow and Look TV and Jesse Jackson. And I'm sure this will be a show that's watched by a lot of people, and that's good. All right. So a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All right, made by Councilperson Brown, seconded by Councilperson McNulty. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, we're adjourned.
The following program is underwritten by the generous support of Associates of Glens Falls and Loomis and Lipan Insurance. Since 1852, they have been assisting both businesses and individuals across the country secure the most comprehensive insurance products available. Associates of Glens Falls is proud to partner with Central Insurance Companies. Public affairs programming on Look TV is underwritten by the generous support of Pinnell's Restaurant, classic Italian-American food since 1922, and Stored Tech, technology solutions for computers, networks, and phone. Stored Tech, your technology, our passion.
1922, Babe Ruth debuts with the Yankees. WGY signs on air. Exterminator wins the Saratoga Cup, and Pinnell's Restaurant opens its doors for the very first time. For 5 generations, Pinnell's has been preparing delicious Italian food, served in a comfortable, home-like setting where everyone is welcomed. 90 years of authentic Italian recipes, 90 years of the freshest ingredients, and 90 years of the finest classic Italian dishes, all made daily by hand. Pinnell's Italian Restaurant, a Saratoga dining tradition since 1922.
Most cybersecurity firms deal only with prevention, the systems that block hackers and viruses. Stored Tech knows the root cause is actually good people doing bad things. So we offer a security training program which includes certifying all participants to show they understand the basics.
Technology solutions for computers, networks, and phones. Stored Tech, your technology, our passion.